Welcome back, everybody, to the world's worst fishing. I'm Chris Jones, and thank you so much for tuning in today. Looks like there might be something on the screen, but I guess not, or excuse me, the lens. So today we're talking more about Plastisol, and particularly floating Plastisol, and a little bit about the observable differences in a regular Plastisol. So for more specifically the Dead On Plastix, so you have the normal black bucket Dead On Plastix, and then you have their new Feather Light floating blend, which is made to have added buoyancy to normal Plastisols. So you have some Plastisols which have a kind of normal floating aspect to them already. You have some that have a sink aspect to them, like the normal Dead On Plastix. And then you have floating plastics. I know MF has made a floating plastic for a long time. I believe Luracraft also has a all floating Plastisol, and now Dead On Plastix has one as well. So they have one that will sink for you and one that will float for you. So we're going to be looking at the floating stuff. And what we're going to kind of do, we're going to do like a side-by-side comparison. We're going to do the I don't want to say regular, but the normal, I guess, that's the same word, Dead On Plastix, and kind of compare it with their new floating blend. Talk a little bit about just some differences that I've noticed working with the two, and then we'll put them in some water and see how they stack up to one another. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and jump in, and thank you guys so much for tuning in. Okay, so here's our setup. Let me, I got to get one of the fans going here. So we have the sinking plastic on the left, the floating plastic on the right, and you can kind of see, I don't know how well it's coming through, the floating plastic is like a little more white. It's like a brighter color just right off the bat, and it's more, can't think of the word here, it's more, gosh, runny, can't think of the word, sorry. I do all these videos kind of winging it first go around. I don't write a script or anything, and sometimes I can't find the right words. But the sinking stuff, I think just maybe the resin's different. To be honest, I don't know what changed, like what's different in a floating versus non-floating, but this stuff just feels and acts heavier. I don't know if that's pertinent information or not. I love them both. So anyway, we're going to do a red bug color. Red bug with green flake for the sinking, and then we're going to do June bug with green flake, obviously, for the floating. And we're going to make a crawl of each, a couple crawls of sinking and floating, and then a couple ribbon tails of sinking and floating. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to go ahead and pop them in the microwave, and then we'll kind of look at the clarity, the bubble qualities, bubble-less qualities, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so we have everything cooked up. Here's the normal sinking, and then spilled a little bit, and then here is the floating. So we're just going to quickly, sloppily pour just a little teeny tiny bait with each clear. So over on the right is going to be our floating. Over on the left, good grief, that cup is hot, is going to be our sinking. Okie doke. So we're going to set this hand pour mold aside. Actually, got to do it with both hands so that the plastic doesn't run. Okay. And I'm keeping it the same direction, so floating over here, sinking over there. And now we're going to add some color. So June bug is going to be our floating. Okay, so we're going to add some black grape color, and then red bug is going to be our traditional sinking, or our regular sinking. So we're going to add some red bug color. I hadn't used this one in a minute, so it might be a little set up. All right, go ahead and start getting these stirred in. Yeah. Sorry, I always block the lighting with my arm when I do my stirring. Need to play with my light setup a little more in here. Okay, there's our red bug, looking really good. And there is our June bug, looking really good. Alright, we're going to go ahead and add some green flake. This is 0.015, that's the small stuff. And that's all we're going to do. We're not going to add the other sizes. Really no need to for this demonstration. This is actually a common way that a lot of manufacturers and smaller bait makers like me make June bug and red bug, is that they only use the small stuff. And I mean, you can see it's a lovely, lovely way to make June bug. And we'll do the same with our red bug here. Alright. Yeah, looking good. In fact, need to scrape some of the flake off here. It kind of sets up on these knives. These knives aren't the best thing to use. That flat side doesn't really do you any favors. If you want to not have to put up with this, just get regular stirring rods. So anyway, we're gonna probably get these back up to temp real quick, and then we're ready to make some baits. Okay, and real quick, while the plastic is back in the microwave, let's get out these little swim baits here. And hopefully I won't stain them with some of the pigment on my fingers. So that is the traditional sinking, and then here is the new floating. So you can see both are incredibly clear. There's not really any clarity lost. And you know, so if you're making some colors that require some clear plastic, I think you can get away with perfectly looking clear baits with either the sinking or the floating. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and do our floating June bug first. Okay, so we're going to do one of the crawls. This is the punch bug. Alright. Again, then we're going to do one of the 7-inch ribbon tail worms. Okay. Alright, and that is the floating blend, which I did with the June bug. So, alright. And it sounds like our red bug is ready. So we're going to do that one next. Alright. And here is our red bug. This is the normal sinking plastic. Okay. So, whoop. Here's our crawl with the red bug. And here's our worm with the red bug. Red bug and June bug, 2 bugs. Okay. Okay, first up, the floating crawls in the June bug. So there they are right there. Alright. Looking good, looking good. We're going to set those aside. Alright. Now we're going to take a look at these ribbon tails. Again, this is the floating plastic in the ribbon tail. Looking good there. Yeah. Looking real good. Alright. Gonna set those down. Close up the mold. Okay. Alright, next we have the sinking red bug punch bugs in the crawl. Looking good. Set those aside. And you guessed it, last but not least, if I can get it apart, the red bug ribbon tails in the sinking plastic. There we go. Boom da ba. Alright, we'll set those down. Okay, so here's what we have, and give me 1 second. Okay, so one good observation is that the new floating stuff has 0, and I mean 0, tacky or sticky feeling to it. I mean, there is just nothing there. it comes out immediately, dry and cured feeling. Some people did not like the kind of tacky feeling that the normal Dead On has. It's got a little bit of stick and tack to it, which, to be honest, I was kind of used to using Lure Works for so many years. You know, some people complained that they couldn't get the normal stuff, the black bucket stuff, to cure all the way and that it was sticky. Normally, that just means that you didn't stir enough or that you didn't cook it all the way to 350. If you do that, I've never had a single problem. So, there's the sinking stuff, and you'll see that it sinks. You know, the tails might stick up a little bit. That's kind of normal. But, you know, for the most part, it sinks. It doesn't sink like a brick. You know, these aren't salted baits. But it is a natural, you know, it's a denser plastic that has a sink to it. The floating stuff, on the other hand, you can see floats. And all these baits are completely up on the surface. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to rig them up and see kind of what the action looks like underwater and see how a floating plastic differs from a sinking plastic when rigged on a worm. Okay, so here we go. Here is the sinking, or the normal Dead On, our red bug punch bug. So let's take a look. Alright, you can see the weight hits. The bait just kind of lays down. The crawls, you know, have a little buoyancy to them, just, you know, the shape. Okay. All in all, if you know how to work that, that looks really good. Alright, here's the June bug crawl. Okay, you can see it stands up a little more. Yeah, it's definitely got a little more buoyancy to it, particularly in the crawls. It's not quite as fast to sink. Yeah, check that out. It stands up a little bit, and obviously the hook weighs down the body because the hook extends through the entire body. Yeah, very cool. Check that out. Pretty nice. Okay, here's the red bug worm. You can see this this worm does a pretty good job standing itself up, even though it has the plastisol in it that sinks. Just it's a good worm in general. Now I've got the weight pegged on purpose so that the worm always hits nose down first, and we can see what it does. So that's with the quote sinking plastic, and you can see it doesn't sink near as fast as a worm with salt. Even the regular sinking stuff still looks killer. Okay, and here's the June bug worm. You can see it stays buoyant a little more. Yeah, look at that. Look how that stands up. Yep. And it won't stand up forever. You know, you kind of have the weight of the water, you know, eventually, you know, it'll probably go ahead and rest on down. But you know, you can see it is a lot more resistant to laying on the bottom. You know, I mean, that right there pretty much speaks for itself. The hook is not propping that up, it's just doing that on its own. And this is actually the swim bait blend of the floating plastic, which has more resin in it than what a worm blend would have. So your worm and finesse blend would actually float better. It would have more buoyancy simply because it's a softer blend with less resin in general. This is the firmest version of the Feather Light series, and you know, even though it is a firmer swim bait blend, it still has pretty good buoyancy. And just to make it a fair fight, this is also the regular swim bait blend. I had some of the worm blend of the regular black bucket, but I went ahead and used both swim bait blend for both. Okay guys, well, that's going to wrap this one up. Hope you enjoyed the video, and yeah, I'm a big fan of the floating plastic. Even if you're not planning on, even if you're not going to necessarily use it for pure floating or buoyant needs, such as like a Ned rig or a drop shot or a Carolina rig, you know, where you want your weight to be free, where you want your worm to be free from the weight, to where it will, you know, hover a little bit off the bottom. Even if you're not really concerned with its floating abilities, and I would encourage you to try some of their softer blends because they'll have more buoyancy. But even if you don't care about that, it's still great Plastisol all around. I mean, there's no tack to it, so it comes out real clean in your injectors. It burns completely clear. There's no clarity lost or difference that I can tell. I've used quite a bit of it now already. Of course, it's bubbleless, no hard packing. It has all of the great qualities that you want in a Plastisol and all of the great qualities that you would expect from Dead On. So, I mean, it's as to be expected. It gets an A+ in my book. You know, it definitely has that buoyant action to it. It definitely floats. I'm actually really curious now to see the worm blends, the finesse and the worm. You know, just to see what kind of added buoyancy that they have. But for a firmer swim bait blend, this does a really good job. And you know, I would absolutely encourage you to try a floating plastic if you've always wanted something like that and you don't like to use the floating additives or anything like that. You know, because floating additives can add, you know, a little bit of cloudiness to your colors. This right here, you don't have that problem. So anyway, we're gonna sign off for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please shoot me comments down below, and thank you so much for watching the channel. Fingers crossed, guys, that in a month or so we'll hit 10,000 subscribers, hopefully before then. And if and when we do that, we'll do a huge giveaway. So please stay tuned for that. That'll be a fun opportunity. And I can't wait to hit that milestone if it happens. So we're on track to do it, and I'm just humbled that I have such a great audience. So thank you guys, and we're gonna go ahead and go inside and get ready for bed because it's getting a little late and I'm tired. So we will catch you next time.